So CCHI recently launched a new English to English or E2E exam for interpreters. Um, can you give us a very general overview of this exam?
Let me start by kind of giving you a very brief overview of what our testing in general
Perfect. Yeah,
currently looks like, right?
perfect.
So, if you are a Spanish, Arabic, or Mandarin interpreter, first you take our core CHI written exam, and that tests you on knowledge of code of ethics, some vocabulary, things like that. But it's completely in English, completely multiple choice, and administered on a computer. If you pass that exam and you interpret Spanish, Mandarin, or Arabic, then you go on to take the oral performance exam, which is a bilingual exam that tests you on your ability to interpret accurately. So, if you interpret a language other than Spanish, Mandarin, or Arabic, then previously the only opportunity that you had to become certified was to just take that first exam, the core
Mhm.
CHI, the written knowledge exam, and that was the end. That was it. You stopped there. There was no test to validate your performance as an interpreter in all of the hundreds of other languages that are out there. So at CCHI, we didn't feel that that was a fair and equitable way to administer a national certification program. We wanted to make sure that if you were a Punjabi interpreter or a Dinka interpreter,
Mhm.
that you also had the ability to get fully certified the same way that a Spanish interpreter would. And it wasn't just for the interpreters, it's also for the healthcare providers and
Mhm.
for the LEP patients.
Mhm.
When they're working with a certified interpreter, I think that they would want to know that that person has been fully validated at the same level that a Spanish or a Mandarin interpreter has, right? It shouldn't make a difference that they interpret a different language. So we set out to study whether or not a exam administered only in English, not a bilingual exam, right? Just in English. Is there a way for us to use one language to validate someone's interpreting skills? And that's why it's called the English to English exam, because you're essentially interpreting from English into English instead of English into Spanish or Spanish into English. You're essentially interpreting from English into English in order for us to validate some of those cognitive interpreting
Mhm.
skills. And so that's what the English to English exam is. The way that we conducted that study was by developing an exam
Mhm.
with subject matter experts. And then during the study, we actually had Spanish, Mandarin, and Arabic interpreters take both the regular oral performance exam for their language, but in addition to that, they also took the pilot exam for the
Mm.
E2E, and then we compared their results on both of those exams. And what we found was that statistically speaking, those exams were on par with one another. In other words, if someone took the Spanish English exam and they took the E2E exam, their performance on both of those exams was on par with each other. And that validated that that exam then was a valid measure of measuring someone's interpreting skills, even though they're not speaking in the other language. There's a whole nother component to it, which is, that we now need to validate language proficiency. And our test doesn't do that, right? Because the test is just testing those skills, but it's not testing your proficiency in the other language. And so that was another layer that we had to incorporate into our process to ensure that you, as a Khmer speaker, um, while you may perform really well on an English to English exam, do you have the linguistic acumen to actually interpret in that language, right?
Mhm.
And so we have a different process that we have implemented to for them to validate their language skills. But altogether, right, that validation of their language skills plus their performance on the English to English exam presents a really neat package, a really nice package that is on par with testing someone in both languages. And so, we feel that this is there's no other organization out there, not even, in other verticals of interpreting that are doing anything like this. So we think it's pretty ground shattering.